I'm Geeta Madhavan, founder member of the Center for Security Analysis, Chennai, India. I'm just talking about the challenges in the Indian Ocean region, and I just want to highlight a couple of issues which are very relevant and which are very interesting to think about and analyze. The first thing, the first part of it deals with the traditional security issues, and under this we have matters of jurisdiction. Although the UNCLOS has settled the kind of jurisdiction areas very clearly into territorial waters and into the contiguous zone and into the EEZ, yet many countries haven't signed the UNCLOS and therefore they feel they're not bound by it. However, customary international law dictates that these be followed, and most nations do follow the same kind of jurisdiction provisions which are available in the UNCLOS. The other question about traditional security is the physical port security. Again, it's a question of deciding this by national laws and also by bilateral and multilateral treaties which ensure that the ports are physically protected. Most of the countries also take protection of the port very seriously. The Indian Ocean region is also very, very important because it's an area, most of the global trade passes through that region, and it's an important link between the East and the West, and it is a region where a lot of interest is being generated now. The other thing which is very, very important when we talk about the Indian Ocean region security is what we call the ocean resources security. Now, the resources that are available in the oceans are vast and people have been exploiting them for centuries. But with modern technology, there is a fear of over-exploitation or exploitation by those countries which have the necessary technology, and the consequence is that those who do not have that technology, or those who do not have access to the oceans but have a right to the product of the oceans, are afraid they're being deprived of it. So this is becoming another major area of discussion. The two ocean resources which are very important is, of course, the traditional resource, which is fishing, and the other natural resources that have been used by mankind for a long time. But the new emerging resource, which is so very important to all global trade and global development, is the energy resources. The energy resources which are available in the ocean and the energy resources that have to move across the waters. The other one, obviously, which impacts all this is the environmental security. They are correlated, so the ocean resources affect the environment and the environment affects the ocean resources. The three things in this area is, one is climate change. The effect of climate change is that ocean levels are rising, so there's a destruction of the natural resources in the ocean. The other environmental problem that we are facing is oil spillages by these ocean liners and these vessels which carry energy across the world, and of course the dumping of nuclear wastes and other radiological wastes. The direct effect of this kind of environmental change is going to be something that has not been addressed largely by the analytical by the community, international community. The analysts are talking about it, but it hasn't come out into open debate. Is the kind of migration, the impact it's going to have on people. People who live near the oceans and coastal states, with the rise of sea levels, are either going to move inwards, creating demographic changes. People in islands are going to look to move elsewhere. Again, there are going to be major demographic changes which will impact every form of life for the people. So we're looking at a question of human security being a fallout of this kind of environmental security. Now we come to the other thing, which is the non-state and asymmetrical threats faced in the Indian Ocean region. The first is, of course, something which is of great interest to anyone who's studying ocean security, and that is piracy. The upsurge of piracy, the need to control piracy, the quick fix method which is being followed, such as the outsourcing of protection of ships to private parties, which is leading to its own security problems. The other thing that we have faced, not to a large extent yet, but we have a fear of facing, is maritime terrorism. Ever since aviation has clamped down severely on security, we find that maritime is of greater interest, and I think what we have seen is the classic case of what happened in Mumbai, India, where we had the terrorists making their approach from the sea. And we're going to see more of that, because it's obvious that that's where they are going to be looking to move themselves around and the oceans being so large, their movement will largely go unnoticed. The other conventional asymmetrical threats are trafficking of drugs, trafficking of arms, human trafficking, and smuggling, which covers an entire set of things. Smuggling of drugs, again smuggling of fuels, smuggling of nuclear materials, and so that's another very, very frightening prospect. I would just like to wind up with two important points, especially in relevance to the Indian perspective. The first is it's very clear that India is very keen on developing a blue water navy to protect its interest vis-a-vis the development of a blue water navy by China. And the Indian defense budget has been allocating for modernization of the navy. The other thing is that India follows a policy of strategic autonomy. So although we do have the United States as a strategic partner, it is very clear that the United States of America is not very comfortable with the strategic autonomy policy that India has been following, where we are willing to do joint exercises and etc., but they are not to be conducted in the Indian Ocean region. They can be conducted elsewhere. So this is leading to a little bit of a strain in the relationship in particular context of the Indian Ocean region. Because the United States somehow has been looking at India as what we call a net security provider. So this is an area which has to be explored and debated and analyzed in detail. The other issue is, of course, India and China, and where they're jostling for space. And the big issue is the South China Sea, which actually is estimated to contain about 19 billion barrels of fuel. And so China is looking at this huge energy reserve because it will address most of its demands. India is also going to be, by 2020, the greatest importer, the world's largest importer of fuel. So we are looking at a huge energy demand in these two emerging economies, and both of them are dependent on this energy to push them into playing greater roles as greater powers in this region. So we've got a whole lot of problems that are emerging, but there is also a question of how does one deal with these problems. To go back to what I was saying, UNCLOS, that is the UN Convention on Law of Sea, has clear directions, but the problem again arises that the delimitation has not taken place yet. Countries are still making claims, and though customary international law has clearly stated 12 nautical miles is territorial sea, 24 is contiguous zone, and the EEZ, it is still very, very difficult to draw clear lines across. It's not possible, and many of these matters are in dispute, and many of these matters are being addressed by international bodies.